Are you looking to build influence? Or maybe to drive more traffic? But bottom line, you want to change the game. You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Business Building Book Club. We're going to give you the tools you need to succeed, both online and in person. Brought to you by Coach Molly and Three Pines Leadership. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Business Building Book Club. I'm your host, Molly from visibilityhacking.com. And as per usual, my friends, I am beyond excited that you guys are here for this episode. So last episode, we went into the latest secret in Russell Brunson's wonderful book, Expert Secrets, the Underground Playbook for converting your online visitors into lifelong customers. By the end of this book, I promise I'll have it memorized, my friends. So last week, we learned about Epiphany bridges, and we learned how important they are and how they can help guide us in our storytelling. That comes out in our messaging, that comes out in the way that we engage with our people. And it's also in the way that our stories are told, both on paper, both in text, and visually, of course. And so I thought this week I'd bring on one of my favorite branding people, my favorite storyteller, the one and only Paul Van Bloem. Welcome, Paul. How are you doing today?
What an awesome intro. Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing awesome. That was, just the cherry on top to begin my day.
Oh, it is the way to start a day, I gotta say. So tell us about how you tell stories. Tell us about you, first of all.
Oh yeah, totally. So I guess I started out, actually, I guess my story starts out when I was dating my wife. I remember we were sitting on her parents' front lawn, actually, talking about what our life was going to look like together. And I remember telling her that like what I wanted to do with my life was help good people become great people. And I had no idea how to do that. But it like was just in my soul and I wanted to get it out. And so of course I went through the brutal, arduous journey of higher education and just felt suffocated and decided to just take the leap and drop out of college and quit my job and was like, I'm gonna be a photographer. And which was looking in hindsight, both the most foolish thing that I've ever done, but also one of the greatest things that I've ever done for my life and for my psyche, I guess. And yeah, by the benevolence of God and sheer luck, I I was able to like land quite a few clients, and I think it was just naturally in me to tell stories. And I shouldn't say that. There was definitely a huge amount of work and 4 a.m. nights. I did quotes for those of you listening, trying to deliver for my clients, and it all ended up landing. But really, I think where I learned to like started really honing that craft of storytelling was, strangely enough, shooting people's weddings. And what I remember looking around at the space of like videographers, like especially the wedding space, like videographers and photographers. There was a lot of people doing like cool cuts and transitions and like really pretty color grading, which was excellent and beautiful. And I was like really envious because some of them were able to do things that I just didn't know how to do technically. And frankly, was a lot of people just better than me as far as like the technical aspect of story of videography and photography. But I was still getting a ton of clients, and and so I started to step back and kind of reflect on what I was doing, and it actually came in a conversation with one of my videographer friends, where I recognized what I was doing, and we landed on the difference between what I was doing, what a lot of other people was doing, is I was telling the story of this like beautiful day, the like one of the most important days of their life, right? I had the ability to show them and tell that story of the emotions that they were experiencing. And well, that's what really people want, right? When you're capturing that day, is like, what emotions were they experiencing on that perfect day, right? And so I was like, oh wow, this is important. This is really good. And um, I started to look around at my family and be like, oh, okay, we need more money. And
Okay.
frankly, weddings aren't bringing in enough money. And with the dreams and the goals that me and my wife had, it was like, this just isn't going to cut it, right? And my cousin was nice enough to get me connected with the company that he was working with, and I started doing like ads essentially, and organic content for them. And it was just working. It was clicking, and it was I was using the same exact skill sets that I was using with weddings, but like translating it for like it was a firearms company, which which was a big transition. But yeah, all the same storytelling skills and tools were expressing themselves there. And yeah, it just kept on evolving. I started getting into branding and graphic design, and um, but I was still like trying to figure out this whole marketing world, and I just hadn't had a lot of like experience in like the nitty gritty of like a sales funnel and all that lingo, and I was like, my wife was pregnant at that time, and I was like, like I've got to have some stability. So I actually went back to the corporate world and felt just suffocated for like a year. It was and it wasn't like, yeah, the corporate world. Oh, no, no, it wasn't that bad. Well, actually, it actually was that bad for me. It's not that bad for most people. I actually remember like laying on, um, yes, lying on the floor of our living room and just like sobbing with my wife. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't wake up at 7 and drive to a job that I hate and make sales calls for 8 hours, 9 hours, and then and come home and like it's dark and I can't like really be with my family. Like this just isn't working. But like I didn't see any other options available to me, and like so we had like a kid and a mortgage, and like I was just like this, like I have to like keep this afloat. And I think everybody feels that sometimes, but funny enough, like during that like existential crisis and deep angst, I got a call from my friend. We had actually worked together like 5 years before that, maybe more. Actually, yeah, it was probably more than that. But Catherine Jones, and she hit me up and was like, "Hey, Paul, I need some like visual assets created for me. I want you to make some videos for me. I'm just gonna have like this little vlog." The way she was talking about it at the time was like, "It's just this little thing," and I was like, "Okay, cool, whatever. Totally, like I can do that on the side." And and my wife was like, she was actually in the car with me when I first took that call, and she was so excited for me. She's like, "Paul, you got to do something creative." Oh, sorry, my Google. I don't know what I said that would sound like that, but she was so excited for me, and she was like, "Paul, like you got to do something creative again." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Um, but it was like I really was so excited about it, and I dove all in, and I was like pulling out all the tricks, and and Catherine loved it. I think she wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was, and I was like, yeah, like, oh, that's right, I can do this. Like it felt like like a lifetime ago that I'd done something like that, and so I ended up it like this was like maybe like we were working together for probably like 2 months, something like that, just like a video here and a video there, and I was like, Catherine, like there's so much more that we can do, and I ended up calling her and being like, which is such a, looking at that moment, I was like, that was such a bold thing of me to do. but but it was like, and again, like one of those moments where like you don't really recognize what you're doing. It was the same thing with like dropping out of college. It was like I didn't really like recognize like the gravity of what I was doing, but it was like pretty intense, like a pretty like foolish, but like one of the greatest things I've ever done for myself. But I was like, Catherine, I want to quit my job and I want to work for you full time. And there's so much that we can do for your brand that would just like totally change the game. And I don't think she really recognized um like what I was actually offering. And so she's like, okay, like tell me like what this would look like. And I mean, first she said, yes, I'm all in, which I was like, what? Okay. And then she's like, well, like, tell me like what this would look like. And so I laid out like what like the branding process would look like, what the storytelling process would look like for like on a macro scale for a brand, and then like on a micro scale with like assets and stuff like that. And and I mean, I think most of your listeners have know Catherine Jones, but like it was a game changer. Like we started telling stories in a way that just wasn't being told in that space. We started offering like an experience, and I think that's like the key word, an experience um, for her audience that um, just wasn't happening. They weren't getting in like that business space like they um, I guess should have been. Um,
Yeah.
and we won.
Yeah.
I should say we're still winning. We're still like building, but it yeah, it was kind of revolutionary for that space. And I think what we were doing, it really is revolutionary in general what we're doing, because we're pulling from a lot of different places. Like we're pulling from, like expert secrets, like the tactics, but we're also pulling from like deep Jungian psychology and and like cinema and like Hollywood cinema, and mixing together this concoction that affects like all aspects of business, from your content side to your like the offers that you create, to the way that like the leader engages with her audience. And yeah, I'm just like so blessed to have the opportunity to work in this space, and with Catherine, and with like all of like our audience is just awesome. And so that was a long story
But
for
I
a
love
short
it.
question, but so maybe I hopefully I answered it somewhere in all that.
Absolutely. And I love that you just went straight into talking about the work you do with Catherine, because that's where you and I met, is through Catherine's
Mhm.
program. And
Yeah.
I have to say, I watched the way that you guys changed your messaging when the world kind of shut down. And you guys had
Mhm.
a huge event that maybe people should have
Yeah.
gone to,
Yeah. Yeah.
Design Hacking Live. And it was an
Yeah.
incredible event. So you guys originally had it planned to be in person in what, February,
Mhm.
and then pushed it back,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
pushed it
Originally.
back
Yeah.
again, and COVID happened. And what
Yeah.
happened? How did
Yeah.
branding and how did your messaging change throughout that?
Yeah. Yeah. So like initially, and we're gonna do it again. Eventually, we're gonna have the space.
Yeah, you
We
will.
had this epic event that we had planned, and like we had spent like 100 hours plus, easy plus, crafting this event, and really working in all like these like the same tools and principles that we were just talking about, to like really create this awesome experience. And I you might have seen a video where we actually like show this moment where Catherine's mom, because she was at her parents' house for some family event, I can't remember, and then when we were still meeting about the Design Hacking Live, and her mom walks in, she's like, "So COVID, guys," and we were like, "Oh my gosh." We had like this moment where like we can't hold this event, and I don't think we like really realized what that was going to look like. But we decided like, okay, what like all the principles that we're using to create this event are still like up, and that's what's really awesome. Okay, sorry, thinking about like four things at once right now. When you have a principally based framework, you're very adaptable. Because I think like sometimes, especially in the funnel world, I think some of the traps that people fall into is they're given a lot of tactics and applications, which is excellent and super important. It really makes the frameworks that like Russell lays out applicable. But I think sometimes people can get pigeonholed into one tactic or one application when they're not seeing the actual like the principle level and even higher, what Catherine and I called the doctrinal level of those applications. And so Catherine and I have really built around principles and doctrines, and so which makes us very nimble to what is thrown at us. And so when that happened, like, yeah, it was devastating, and we had put together so many applications that we couldn't use anymore. But what we did is we sat down, we had a whole spreadsheet laid out of literally minute by minute what we were going to do for this event, and we just went minute by minute again and said, okay, this is what we were going to do in our live event. What's the doctrine or principle governing this application? How can we translate that for a virtual experience? And so one of the things, so we laid out our virtual event, and we're like, okay, we can do this. Like, this is really awesome. Like, this is going to be a really great experience. But there was this aspect that was kind of missing of like really like tangible coaching, like yeah, I guess that's the best way I can put it, but like getting a really like personal experience. And so we said like, well, what would it look like? What would it look like virtually for us to provide that kind of experience? So we ended up doing this. We ended up, and also like to, like, that was one aspect of it, but also another aspect of it was like, hey, like, we're going to be like piecing out for like 6 months on these people. Like, how can we like help them still feel like we like care about them, that they're seen, that like still want to even engage with us after 6 months? Because they had like this like buying experience that was like, oh, I'm really excited about this, and we have to kind of sustain that, right? Yeah. So that when the event comes, they're still pumped, right? Yeah. And so we ended up deciding that one of the best ways that we could do that was to like essentially tack on a 6-month coaching experience that was just like so excellent. And luckily we were working with like just some rad people that were willing to help us with that. Like I mean, like Katie Richardson, Cody Jefferson, and Stephanie DeBlake, and all these awesome people. And they were willing to help us out with that. But like what happened, actually, we were expecting people to like ask for refunds, and which we were totally prepared to do. But what ended up happening is we didn't have one refund, and we had actually increased sales for this event, which was just like mind blowing for us. I mean, it shouldn't have been, because we were doing exactly what we were supposed to be doing. But it was just like, again, like I think like the grace of God and like some really excellent frameworks allowed for that to happen. So yeah, that was like the psychology behind it. Was just like we instead of functioning from an application base, we decided, well, not decided, but we relied on the governing principles of those applications.
Yeah, like so much in the funnel world is all about like funnel hacking. So it's looking at what you can see on the outside and building it backwards that way. But unless you're on the other side of that fence, unless you're on the other side of that experience, you can't really reverse engineer it from the outside, right? So I love that you guys have, what your tangible results are from a grand perspective of like, at the end of this long program, this is what we want to get. And then you can break that down into tangible results day by day, minute by minute. And it was incredible to be part of that experience in your virtual event, to see from the moment the music started playing and the countdown played, everything was scripted in an amazing way. It was, we want you to feel this. We acknowledge that you feel a certain way when you're walking into the experience. And now how can we match that and move you to the next feeling? All right, how can we
Yeah.
match that and move you to the next feeling? And
Yeah.
the speakers you had in line spoke exactly to those moments that each and every one of us were feeling. And then bam, Catherine comes back in with another training of how can we maximize that experience we're feeling and turn it into our business. It's you guys, I love how you guys keep us connected to those emotions that we're going through and help us turn that into our businesses, into our movements, and into ways that we can actually change the world and the people around us. So powerful.
Yeah, it was really, really so fun. And actually I wanted to come back and you talked about the word that you used was scripted. And I think like that's right, but I want to adjust it just a little bit. I think like the way that I look at it is like we mapped it out.
Yeah.
In that like we knew the points that were connected, and we did like get really specific about that almost in a scripted way. But we really try, again, like we really try and function by like a principle level, and we were mapping out the principles and then filled it in. But what that allows for is like if something breaks in the scripting, it allows us to like adjust back to principles. And like kind of on the fly like adjust. And Catherine's excellent at that because she's just really quick on her feet. But I think one of the reasons why she's so quick on her feet is because she relies on principles rather than applications. And so she's not like, oh, like I don't know what to do anymore because my script is broken. Which is I think on a macro level, what's really dangerous for a lot of businesses is they are functioning on a scripted level, which is important. Again, like I'm not trying to discount that because that's super important. And I think there's a lot of people that try and like wing it because they're like, oh, I feel good and I have some principles, right? But you can't do that. You have to have both. Like you have to be able to function on a scripted level and on a mapped level, or application or principle level, right? So that when the COVID's thrown at you, you can adjust, or when like a speaker does something weird, you can adjust, or which that wasn't me hinting that any of our speakers did. They were all doing great, genuinely. But like if something breaks, you can like lean back on your frameworks and your principles to be able to like bring about the results that you were talking about, right? The results that you want to see.
Yeah, definitely. So how did that pivot, that's the word of 2020, right? Pivot. So how did that pivot?
I actually think it's a great word.
I do too. I've just heard it way too many times this year.
Yeah. No, I know.
So how did that quick turn? How did that quick turn change your message and like how you were actually telling the story in terms of your visual branding and that kind of messaging?
So when we first when COVID first hit, and we're working with like an awesome ads person, Lisanne Murphy, plug, and we were getting like excellent results before COVID hit, and our messaging was very much like, go get your dreams, life's awesome and you can be awesome too. And when COVID hit, those ads like just tanked, and we were trying to like kind of figure out like what's happening here and why is that the case. and I say we, it was actually more like Lisanne and Catherine were working on this, but
it's a team effort.
Yeah, we're all there. But they what they ended up like realizing was they were pulling people, they were pointing towards a greater, grander future. So they were pointing towards some prize. And generally people do something for two reasons. They're either moving away from pain or they're moving toward a prize. And what they recognize is like that was just totally the wrong message for the current psychology of COVID. That like what people are like, okay, cool, I can go and build some fun thing, but I'm just trying to pay my mortgage because I got furloughed. Like or like I'm like looking at my kid and going, am I gonna have Christmas for you, right? And so what they ended up doing was shifting the message to be like, instead of like go achieve your dreams, be an entrepreneur, they said, hey, this is going to provide you some security right now in these like unsure times. Like right now you don't have control over your life, here's how to gain some control. And and here's a skill set that people really need, especially right now in COVID. And things totally turned around based off of that messaging. So it's very much, I think, a key aspect of storytelling and Epiphany Bridges is that, and again, I think something that Russell talks about, like in .com Secrets and early on in this book, but I think should be tied right here in Epiphany Bridges, is that you have to be empathetic toward where your audience currently is. A huge aspect of storytelling is understanding your audience, right? Like, in fact, you want to go on a little bit of a tangent?
Always.
Something that I always struggled understanding was the current formula in Hollywood for storytelling is really, I don't know. I just kept on, I'd go to movies and I'd be like, yeah, that was fun. But like, I don't really get it. Like, it's not landing for me. Like the way that like some pieces of art do, where I'm I'm just like enwrapped in it, and just like, and they make like the script writers make the hard decision that like rent your soul, but you're also like so happy about it. And like, and I was like, I wasn't like getting those moments. And my brother pointed something out to me that was like really like surprising to me. And he said, okay, like, look at this. Who are the buyers for these movies? And a huge part of them is Western culture, right? But even more so now, where the real money makers is right now is in Asia. And they have a very different cultural view of stories. And so the scriptwriters realized that instead of writing for Western culture, they needed to be writing for Asian culture, or Eastern culture, I guess is which way the way I should be saying it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is why it's not landing for me, because I have a totally different lived experience than Eastern culture, right?
Yeah.
And it was so interesting for me to be like, oh my gosh, like that's why they're making these decisions. And like watching it again, I'm like, oh my goodness, this looks like something that's coming out of Japan or China, or like like it totally made way more sense to me. And it was the right decision on the part of Hollywood to do that. Even though like it didn't jive with me, but they knew their audience and they knew who they were writing for. But I just thought it was just super interesting.
So when it comes to storytelling and you have like the mindset or the experience, or as you've said in previous trainings and whatnot, the paradigm that your viewers are walking into your story with, when you have such different paradigms of the West and the East, for example, how do you tell a story that speaks to both segments of the population at the same time, even though they're coming at the story from totally different points of like perspective points to begin with?
Good question.
Like I'm so curious about like how you address that and get people from various starting points to the same feeling through the storytelling modem, right?
Well, I think part of it is well, I think there's two answers. One is you don't. I think you have to decide, like Hollywood did, like you have to decide where's my goal, right? And for some people that's money, like with Hollywood, like they just want to make money. They could have said like, no, we really want to impact Western culture, and so we don't care about the money. We want to like really speak to the Western culture and really move these people. They could have done that, but it's like, I think part of it is you just have to decide, who am I speaking to? I don't think that's the whole answer though, because I mean, all of us are human, and there are some underlying general I shouldn't say general, but like, again, like doctrinal, like true everywhere.
There's like common threads that are woven through.
Yeah. Actually, funny enough, I have on my desk a book that is just genius. That actually talks about this. It's called, for those of you that want to know, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette. And it's about archetypes that exist throughout every culture, And specifically the myths or stories that are told throughout these cultures that have like almost identical mappings of one another. And so there's these general, or like these underlying general psychology underpinnings that affect all of us. And actually, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, right here, actually. There's a line in here in this book that says, movies are like ancient folk tales and myths. They're stories we tell ourselves, about our lives, and about their meaning. So like when we're telling stories, the purpose of telling stories is to reflect back to us our own psychology, actually. And that's why they're so like moving and evoke such emotion in us. And there's actually another great book by Joseph Campbell, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. He maps out the hero's journey, right? Which is just like a general framework for telling people about themselves and what to do. And so I think like there's definitely like, if you want to understand how to do that, I think that's like grand level master like storytelling. I don't know if I've reached, but like you really have to like dive into their psychology. Like you have to get really deep, like past just the surface level. Like actually, like one of the stories, like the Pinocchio story, is a reflection of a lot of other like deeper myths, where like Pinocchio is like the fake boy, right? He's not real. He hasn't, and the metaphor behind that is he hasn't ascended to his grandest version of himself, a real boy, right? He's still playing around with, like, doesn't know what to do, and so he like loses his way, right? But he has the guide. That's like, the guide is a key psychological structure that all of us have in us, and it anyway, I won't go down there, but and then he goes on his journey. He runs into some crazy stuff. He ends up making some poor decisions, which turn him into a donkey, right? Like that's like another key psychological point, that like, hey, like when I make stupid decisions, I look like an ass, right? Like it's like that's and not only that, but it's like I end up morphing into a shadow version of myself, not a real version of myself. He's captured, he escapes. That's another thing there. He ends up going into the body of the whale, which we can like look at, like Jonah and the whale. Like this is another key point, that you have to dive into the deepest parts of hell and discover your father, which is another huge one. And then once you escape the hell with your father, and with the guidance of your father too, you emerge and become the real boy, right? The truest version of yourself. Like all of that, like if you really like want to find like key story structures that like can help you speak to all audiences, no matter who they are, like I think that's where you really find them. That's where the principles are, is in like those old ancient stories that have existed forever. And so it's like, well, then the question becomes like, okay, cool, Pinocchio, how do I apply that to marketing? But like, I think those same structures, like if you look at like a really good like webinar or like sales script, they actually follow some similar structures. So it might be like even like with my story, what that I told at the beginning, it's like, hey, I was like a false version of myself that wanted this dream. Like I wanted to be a real boy. I wanted to help good people become great people, right? And then I like went on my journey. I went to college and I was like, wow, this sucks. And then I took a leap of faith. Like that's another one, like the leap into the unknown, right? That's what Pinocchio did when he like, I'm gonna go and be a real boy, right? And then I like dove into hell, right? I was on my living room floor sobbing with my wife. And I had this moment where I had an unexpected call to adventure with Catherine, right? And I took it, I made it, right? So like all these structures like follow similar, and I bet you if you watch one of Russell's like webinars, and you literally took Pinocchio or Lion King, like their script, and you would find similar trends through it. And so like, I think that's like what really good marketers do is they look at society and they look at psychology, they like line them up to one another and they look for patterns in it. And so like, you have to get hundreds of data points. If you want to be a really, really good marketer, you need to get hundreds of data points and kind of hold them all in your head at one point and then go, okay, what are the patterns? And then like identify them. And it's really messy work. It's really hard work to do. But if you can do that, you start tapping into deep psychology rather than surface level psychology. And that's where like branding comes in. Like you can make some sales with some surface level psychology, but if you want to be a lasting movement, like you have to tap into deep psychology. Or else like it's like COVID hits and you're done, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you don't have those guiding principles, then you're just going to say, oh, my live event is canceled. My live event is canceled, rather than my live event is canceled. What could we make it to make it even better? How do we take our reality and put our framework into the reality instead of trying to make reality fit our framework? So, okay, well, here's my idea.
And I also think, just as one other tangent, I also think when you do that, you start identifying your own psychology. If you can really get like reflective about it, you go like, okay, am I in the belly of the whale right now? Like, what do I need to do? Like, and like, where is my father? Right. And like, what is the lesson that's trying to be taught to me in the belly of the whale? And how can I like escape this? And like, I think that really good marketers, and I shouldn't even say that, you can be a really good marketer and not do this, but it's like, you're going to be miserable. But like, if you want to find real fulfillment in your life, which I think like a lot of like the entrepreneur, like that's what entrepreneurs want, right? They want money and fulfillment. And you like start mapping those same patterns onto yourself, and like you'll recognize some like deep dark stuff about yourself, but you'll also like see the way out too. Anyway,
and it's understanding those deep dark moments in yourself as well that help you create those epiphany bridges for your people. Because if you're deep dark in the belly of the whale and you finally see the light and you're like, whoa, you have to take a moment to pause and say, okay, what caused me to see that light? What steps happened? What was going on around me so that I can help recreate that, replicate it, and tell that story to build that bridge for your people so that they get there faster than you did.
Cool. Yeah. Well, and that's what people want. Like, that's what like people are yearning for. They so badly want, and I hate to use this word, but like they want surface level, what they think they want is they want a guru. But what they want is they want meaning and direction and purpose. And if you want to build like a real impactful vehicle for yourself, like, or business, is like that's how you do it. You show people the light and the way, and like, and that's what, and it's like, it's such a beautiful, I think that businesses can be one of the greatest self-development tools available to man. Like, I genuinely believe that it is, because it forces you to engage with society at a really like in the mud way. Like, it forces you to make decisions. It forces you to like to stare your dragons in the face and choose to slay them or not. Like, it's like so cool. I think that I think it's one of the greatest gifts that we have available to us is building businesses. And again, it's like, it's not for everybody, but I think it's an excellent tool. I was going to say something else, but I forgot. So.
Okay, so let's go back to Pinocchio, because I have this weird idea. So if we as entrepreneurs create even just a baseline structure, rough draft of our Pinocchio story, of our hero's journey, like on a mass level, then we could technically take each of those individual moments of crisis and create a piece of content for that. Those individual, like,
or even
this is my belly of the beast moment. Like, this is my meeting my father moment. This is my Kierkegaard's leap of faith moment. Like, what do you think about that?
No, totally. I think 100%. I think what's really cool about stories is like if you the moment that I realized this was I was watching Ocean's 11 actually.
Great
and which beautiful movie, love it so much. And I was like, I was watching their scripting, and that scripting in that movie is genius. But I watched a story arc happen over the course of like 30 seconds, and I was like, oh my good, it was like a like light. But what happens is in good storytelling, well, I think it's kind of evolved. I think we have like shorter attention spans, and so we like Hollywood has had to get quicker and snappier. But you should be experiencing a story arc, like again, like every minute to 30 seconds. So like you have many conflicts and many resolutions, and you have as Catherine put it, you have a nab really quick, and then they like set the stage, then they're like, oh, like this is I'm trying to remember exactly the moment. I think it was Matt Damon's character, I forget his name. But he was asking like, do I like look, I'm forgetting. This is probably not right, but I think he was like asking each of the characters like if he like looks like his dad or something like that. I'm totally wrong about this, but anyway, but he's like, and each character is like, nah, and they're like giving him answers that he doesn't want, and he's like, you can like see him like struggling like in this conflict, like, wait, but like I thought I had a different version of myself in my head. And then there's like this like quick resolution at the end, and it's like, and it's literally this scene where they're like standing in like a subway tunnel or something like that, or like at an airport. And it's like just like this little moment that doesn't have a lot of consequence throughout the overarching like story. But it developed his character in a way that people were like, oh, like this is like really engaging and funny and exciting. And I would, next movie you watch, like look for that. If it's a good script, you'll see like these little story arcs constantly being resolved. And we can do the same in our marketing. We should have a like kind of like a mass like story arc that our audiences will experience like over a month or 2 months or sometimes even like 6 months. You could call those campaigns, right?
Yep.
Where like people like go through the story arc or a launch maybe. But in each like piece of content that you put out, it should follow a general story arc. And so like you're exactly right. Like if you watch the movie Pinocchio, you'll see little conflicts and resolutions throughout the whole story. Like when he's in the whale, like that, you have this moment where he's swallowed up by the whale, and it's like this big nab, and then it's like dark, right? And it's like it's setting the ground zero, and then it's like I'm trying to remember. It's been so long since I've seen that movie.
It's everyone's homework. But like, go watch it.
Yeah. But I could bet you that that he has a moment of like of conflict and escalation, and then like this climactical moment where he's like, it's my dad, and then they're like, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to get out of this belly of this whale? And then they like start a fire, right? And so yeah, I mean, we totally can do that. All like each moment can be its own story. And the reason why I said or product is because if we're mapping out our customer ascension or like our customer's journey, they're going to come in they're going to be faced with conflicts along their ascension to the greatest version of themselves within your company, right? And at each of those conflicts, we get to resolve with a product, right? Yeah. So it's like, here's the conflict, and we can like nab them right there and be like, hey, did you realize you have this conflict? And they're like, oh my gosh, yes. And then we're like, we set the ground zero. Yeah. And then we say like, hey, if this isn't resolved, like this is what's going to happen. And you're already feeling this right now. You're feeling the tension of not having this resolved. And then we have like the escalation. And you know what you even don't see is how bad it could really get. Yeah. And then we provide them the solution and fulfill, right? So like, that's like, yeah, that's how I'm seeing that question played out, right?
Oh, that just gave me so many ideas for content. I love it.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk like very specific. If you want to give people an actual tangible framework or homework step so that they can start building better epiphany bridges, what is your advice for them?
Putting me on the spot. I would say I think like key, like you have to understand who your customer is and you have to understand the result that you're giving them.
Yeah.
I think like Russell Brunson has given a gift to marketers of of helping people understand that they have to understand who.
Yeah.
But something that I think the funnel space has yet to realize is that we also have to understand what we're like the end game. And I'm not just talking like, I think one part of that is like, what's the tangible result you're giving people? Like, what are they actually going to get if they buy your course, your program, your product? Like, what are they going to be able to hold and experience as a result of your product?
And we're not talking about empowerment.
Yeah, exactly. You know, yeah, we're not talking about empowerment. We're talking about like, what are they going to get? What is the sexy, exciting thing that's going to happen in their lives and for them that they aren't going to experience, that they don't have right now? But I'm also saying like end game, who are they going to become? Like, and what does that actually look like? I made up a little graphic of this, but it's like you have like for those of you listening, I'm going to try and describe this. We'll see how it goes. You have like a stick figure version of a person at the beginning of this journey, and ultimately you should have a clear enough vision of what that stick figure person is going to become, that you have like a high def vision of what that person looks like at the end of experiencing what your company can do for them. And what that really clearly does for you as a marketer is it helps you bridge the gap. Like you have to build the bridge between those two in your head to be like, okay, if there's a stick figure version, I need to understand what's the first conflict that they're going to engage with. And like as soon as you identify that, like you start to understand, okay, well then what's the tangible result behind that, and what's like the higher def version of that person that I'm going to be able to like help them step into. And then you say, okay, what's the next step, and what's the next step? And so essentially what that's doing is that's building you out a value ladder, right? And then behind each one of those, you can start to say, okay, where are they currently at right now? What's the story that they need to see, understand, experience in order for them to make that bridge between where they're currently at, the epiphany bridge, right?
Yeah.
And then if we really want to get like super tactical, it's like, okay, you can ask yourself a couple different questions. Okay, now that I have this story, what's the best medium for me to express that story in? Is that going to look like a graphic? Is that going to look like a photo? Is that going to look like written content? Is that going to look like a podcast? Is that going to look like a video, right? And then you can start to say, okay, what's the best medium? Then you go and find somebody that actually is an expert in that medium, and you pay them to make that piece of content, or you take a course, or I don't know, whatever you need to do that. But you craft that story, and the more emotion that you can evoke in that, the better. And like it's all about, like, marketing is just all about empathy. It's all about empathy. If you can just understand who you're talking to and understand the result that you want to get them, marketing is just making that bridge. But that's what you have to do when you're making this piece of content. You have to get really empathetic and say, okay, like what do they need to see, experience, and feel, and how can we do that? And you have to start breaking the rules a little bit and say, like, I'm going to experiment this new way, and then you do it, and you're probably going to mess up a couple of times, and you try again until you build you build out the piece of content that tells that story well. And then you just start repeating that process over and over again through each of your products and each of your campaigns and each of your on each of your platforms. I don't know if that was like super tactical,
Well, I
but
think
that's the way that I
that's the
see the process.
strategy. Yeah, and that's the strategy behind it that most people aren't doing. They're just creating content for the sake of content. And it's
Yeah, which is
again like
I honestly is more damaging than not creating content, I think. Like I shouldn't say that. Sometimes I think it's an excellent exercise to be like,
Yep.
let's practice being brave.
Yeah. Yep.
But also
Yep.
like it's like, and that's awesome, and I think that's really good, but it's also like, if you like, when you produce content, you're also going to train people how to see you. And so if you're producing content that's like not speaking to people, they're going to recognize, they're going to say like, oh, well, like I'm not really seen by this person. So if I'm really looking for answers, I don't know if I'm going to go to them. Yeah.
True.
I shouldn't say that. I like, I think I really honor and appreciate that people are willing to be brave enough to put themselves out there.
Yep.
I think that's really important. And genuinely, I actually like, I think that that's a step along the path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like, you're going to have to rebrand yourself at some point, along that journey.
Yeah. And that can be an even bigger and more of a headache inducing experience if you've given that appearance to the public that you are X, Y, and Z, and now you're going to completely shift. That'll repulse a bunch of people for sure. It'll confuse some people. And then you might even show up on someone's Instagram feed and they're like, who are you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think it's just like a time game too. Like, I think the journey that you'll have to go through to make that rebranding is just like producing a lot of content over like maybe a month or two, or maybe even 3 months or 6, where like you're starting to like shift people's perception and reality of you. Like, cause people are constantly building a heuristic of you. Yep. Like, what's a smaller word of that? It's like a, they're building a story of you, right? They have a script about who you are, right?
Yeah.
And so like, you're like, it's a habit of thinking of you a certain way. And so it's going to take some time to change that habit. Yep. You're going to have to build new neural pathways for them.
Yeah.
Ooh. But I think that's what's like so cool about behind all of this is like, is deep psychology. It's like, all of these lessons. And I think this is why, part of the reason why I think marketers are, like so in love with like self-development, or entrepreneurs like are so in love with like self-development and like coaches and they're even willing to like see therapists is because like all this is rooted in relationships and psychology. And that's why I love what I do. I love that I get to like coach people and like be in their business, because it really helps me fulfill on, what I was talking about at the beginning of this, like my dream on my in-laws lawn that like I get to help good people become great people. And like, and like, I have like this really awesome opportunity to like coach people one-on-one and like help them like see into their business and like into their lives and like, and help them like step into the leaders that they want to be and see through the haziness and the messiness of their lives and make the decisions that they want to make and build the lives that they want to build. And it's like, it's just so fulfilling, like to be able to be engaged as a marketer and an entrepreneur and as a coach, like, and that's like, I guess like the call behind like to your audience is like that you, and like what you're helping them do is like engage in reality in a totally different way than you can through traditional means, like, which is so rad. It's like so cool.
Oh man. Okay. Well, it is time that we have to wrap this up, unfortunately. Any last words for our audience?
Oh no, I think that last statement was pretty good. But I think storytelling is just brilliant. It's so fun, and epiphany bridges are essential. But like, I think these are great tactics and these are great principles. But like really the work that we're engaged in at a higher level is like becoming a greater version of ourselves and helping others become a greater version of themselves,
Yeah.
which is just so dope.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
fun. What a cool gift that we're given as
But it's a
entrepreneurs.
really powerful gift because people can use it in the wrong way, and people can use
Yeah,
these skills and these strategies and these tactics to take people's money and walk away with it, or to
yeah,
convince them to follow you off the cliff, for example.
yeah,
Or those of us who have been called to do something a little bit greater are able to show people the light and help them walk towards it. And that
yeah,
is so powerful. Like, I get
yeah. And I
chills
think you hit on
talking about
something.
it.
Yeah, I think you hit on something really important. It like that this is something that can be used for evil too.
Yeah.
Like, and when we, the reason that I think a lot of these people that are damaging others sometimes aren't even intentionally doing it. I think actually oftentimes aren't. And I think part of the reason why is because they haven't applied these same principles to themselves in
Yeah.
a powerful way. Like they haven't looked at their own psychology. They haven't looked at their own habits. They haven't, they've chosen to retreat from their demons and their dragons that are
Yeah.
presented to them. And like that's like the work that like that I'm trying to engage in at like at a deeper level is like helping entrepreneurs face their own demons and while also like being able to like lucratively do that
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and like really tap into a more divine version of themselves and a greater version of themselves so that they can look at their life's work when they're laying on their deathbed and go, wow, like it was worth it. And
Yeah.
like, and I did have some real impact because like ultimately those people that choose not to stare at their demons, like and defeat them and they like don't have the tools to do that. I think a lot of them like unconsciously are like they've had old scripts and old stories in their
Yeah.
lives for so long that they don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, but we also have the converse of that. Like we have an awesome opportunity presented to us to really like level up and change the world for good. We have such
Yeah.
power, like you were saying, such powerful tools available to us to like really impact the world for good and ourselves and experience joy and satisfaction and a release from the chaos and the monotony of life through
Yeah.
like these awesome principles.
Oh, 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 this has been absolutely
Yay.
fantastic. How can people get into your world? How can they get in touch with you?
At Instagram at Paul Van Bloem. And you can hit me up on Facebook. I'm really much in Catherine's world, and so that's really probably where you'll see a lot of me. But I also like, yeah, I also do like coaching on the side as well, and so that's more of what you'll see on Instagram. So.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this, all of your knowledge with us. This was a fantastic conversation. I
Awesome.
have homework. You guys listening at home also have homework. You're going to watch Pinocchio. You're going to read a few books and then go watch your top 5 favorite movies and look for all of those story arcs.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
Awesome.
right,
Thank you so
everyone.
much, Molly. This was so fun.
This was great. I loved it. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I will see you again next week where we will dive back into expert secrets. If you haven't already gotten your copy, make sure you do. Links are all in the descriptions as per usual, but I'm going to sign off because I love you guys. And remember, as per usual, I love you and be excellent to each other.